in England, I do think that there is like an inherent race problem, especially when it comes to stuff like this, because a part of me is actually not happy, but it's good to see that we didn't win the Euros, because if we won the Euros, we wouldn't have seen how much of an issue there still is out there with racism. It would have been overlooked, would have been overshadowed. We'd have all been celebrating with these racist people that are all like, "Oh, this is great, this is fantastic." So
let's give it again. Give me context. I'm presuming the people you're talking to are still a minority compared to majority.
I don't know. This is the thing, Gaurav, right? You don't know. So if we look at, this is really random, but look at percentages, right? Number of racist messages that are put out there, fine. They're in hidden profiles, anonymous profiles. Probably a few hundred. But that's people who are brave enough to think, I could just talk on social media and nothing's going to happen to me. There's loads of this stuff happening in other separate private conversations.
Plus the people who think it but don't say it, that's what you're saying.
So there is that as well, which I'll come to, because there's been instances of like messages being leaked. So all that stuff has happened. Now, going back to this, so I'm really happy that I support England, but we always see its ugly head appear, and it makes me think twice if English culture is as accepting as we think it is. So I sit there and think, is English culture really that welcoming as what I thought it was, say, back in like the 70s or 80s when hooliganism was really at its highest?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things here. There's racism in isolation. Let me explain what that means. And then there's racism which leads to violence. So that, the former which you're talking to in the 70s and what we hear from, maybe not when our parents came, but maybe their parents, right? And other ethnic minorities, there was they talk about riots, they talk about violence, they talk about like abuse, right?
Yeah.
My question is that still prevalent?
I don't know. I think now, I still think personally, if I was me, there's some parts of the UK I wouldn't walk into if I was brown on my own. Because I wouldn't be comfortable with it. I know that that's maybe a very UKIP area, or that's a very racist area, because that's how it is. Fine, I respect that. So I do think that's still there. That it's just there's not barriers, there's borderlines been built where people are like, that's a racist area, that's an okay area, that's an accepting area, that's a neutral
moderate
area,
progressive. You've got progressive areas.
And there's some spaces where you just don't bother setting foot into because you know what's going to happen to you. Right. So I think that there is a distinction to be had there, but the problem, football and politics run side by side. I know people don't like to think this, but it really does. Now, if you look at what the MPs did with like the booing of the players taking the knee, so everybody thought the players were taking the knee at the start of a football game because of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay.
They said they weren't doing it for that; they were doing it for racial inequality. Now you've got two issues here. Okay. You've got Boris Johnson and Priti Patel, who were asked, do you endorse that or do you condone it? Or do you condone players being booed? Priti Patel said players can essentially do what they want. Sorry, fans can do what they want. If they want to boo, they have a right to boo. So she didn't condone it. Boris said he wouldn't take the knee, or he didn't necessarily say he was for it or against it. He didn't condone it. So by doing that, you're essentially empowering people to take things one step further. So why would you boo a player who's taking a knee for racial inequality? Surely we all want that to be stamped out, right?
Should be universal, yeah.
That should be a universal thing, but it's not. So it's no surprise that those three players were racially abused afterwards, but I do think that part of that is down to politics and what the MPs did.
So not coming out strong enough to have an opinion, right?
Exactly, and they didn't come out strongly in favour of the players or taking the knee. Instead, Priti Patel said, it's gesture politics, which is really wrong, because it's not gesture politics. They're telling you the reason behind it, the reason why they're doing it. And she's saying, don't take the knee, there's other ways of protesting. I'm like, hang on.
Yeah, but
that's probably the most peaceful way you can protest.
It's peaceful. And look, we talk about social media and influencers, right? Influence is all about reach.
Yeah.
Maybe apart from Shindy, who doesn't like football, I think everybody watches when England plays. If you're in England, even if I don't watch football, Premiership, whatever, but if England are playing...
Viewership of the England game peaked at like 30 million or something on Saturday.
Right. And the population of the UK is...
A population of like 65 million. So
right, so 50%. Really, that's really a lot of people.
But that was only on BBC. I don't know ITV's figures. Maybe they were higher.
Fine.
Right?
Point is,
or maybe
it's got a lot of viewership. A lot of viewership. So... whatever she's saying about gesture politics doesn't make sense, man. You've got people who are role models for a lot of people, right? Because the thing is, when we look at the racists, right, you've got the you got people who are set in their ways, who just haven't been challenged for a long time, who are inherently just fixated on an ideology. But then you've got this other, the generation below who can still be influenced, right? The influenceables, the next generation. And if they're looking up to footballers, and footballers in England, our superstars, people like Grealish and all this type of thing, right?
Yeah.
If they're doing something meaningful with the right intentions, and like you said, they're explaining why they're taking the knee, this is the thing. It's not just for show or whatever. It's a real meaningful thing that shouldn't exist in this year, 2021, right? Then it's a perfect platform, man. This is a perfect platform to show young people that this is important. And she's saying, "Oh, you can, what did she say? Protest in
you
other
have
ways.
a right to boo the players if you want." But then afterwards,
I think that comment just does not need to be said.
Saying that they're shocked that racism is still happening, and I'm like, you guys
made
are
these
mobilizing
comments.
this, like you're orchestrating this from the very beginning. It's stupid. It's like you're lighting other people's torches and then they're setting fire and you're saying, "Oh, how did the fire happen?" I'm like, you lit the torches. That's what happened. Can you not see that?
I mean, look, we are a country where free speech is important to us, right? But there are some instances where, although we know that, I don't think it's important to make it blatantly and say it. Like she said it there. She's right. People do have a right to boo it. That's right. Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't say it, not someone in her position. She should have an opinion.
You should also say that I understand why the players are doing it. Like, if you say you understand why the players are doing it, don't boo them. They can take this for the right means. Who doesn't want racial inequality? Preeti Patel, you're a minority. Surely you would think that. But then again, you're a conservative, so maybe you're not as minority focused as, say, somebody else. So I guess there's a bit of leeway to be had there. So the weird thing is, though, is that you can see cracks in the government forming now, which is senior Tories have come out and said that they disagree with the government's response to taking the knee. So there's a guy called Johnny Mercer, who's a former ex-Marine. He's an MP of Plymouth Moor. One of the players afterwards, Tyrone Mings, he had a go at Preeti Patel on Twitter saying, "You don't get to come out and condone something when you set fire to it," basically. I think his exact quote was, "You don't get to stoke the fire at the beginning of the tournament by labelling our anti-racism messages gesture politics and then pretend to be disgusted when the very thing we're campaigning against happens." And this guy, Johnny Mercer, who is a Tory MP, says, the painful truth is that this guy's completely right. He's very uncomfortable with the position the Conservatives are in and forcing themselves into. And he says, "Do I fight or stay silent? Modern conservatism was meant to be more to me. We shouldn't lose our way." So you can see there's cracks within the party forming, which is like, hang on, I think we can all agree that racism is wrong. Like that should be universal amongst the party, but it isn't.
The world.
So it's one of the things that I've heard James O'Brien say about the government. He said this government, they'll flip a coin, they'll shout heads and they'll shout tails. So they'll say, "Don't boo, but you can boo." It's like, what? That doesn't make sense. You're giving
what does that sound like?
Messages. Exactly, and they keep doing that for all these things, like
COVID.
Stay indoors, go outside. Like
go to work, but don't try and work.
Exactly, it doesn't make sense, and they keep doing it, and people keep on listening to it. And
this is the problem. Like we've talked about many times on previous podcasts. People like to be led. Okay, most people in the population are sheep. Jordan Peterson, 95% of what you say is not your own opinion. So if you have someone in power, obviously leadership, the government, right, central government, who are saying things, and you're an impressionable mind, you're a vulnerable mind, let's say, who can't critique and form your independent thought, then actually you're going to adopt that opinion. And that's the point. What you're making is that if somebody presents something that basically just creates confusion, do this and do this, but you're saying both things, that confusion then just leads to this herd mentality. And then that's where all this hate comes from, man.
Exactly. So that's pretty much the crux of that problem. Now, the weird thing is that with the issues in the party, obviously each MP is going to take a stance that is going to show the best interest of their voters. Now, if you look at someone like Preeti Patel, I'm sure she says what she does because she believes it, but it's also because she needs to score favouritism amongst her constituents so she can get re-elected. Everything in politics is all about scoring points. So no matter what happens, it's all about like, I'm going to say something, but it has to be what reflects the people in my area. Otherwise, I'm not going to get re-elected.
Rather than what I think.
So I'm sure she is basically saying the stuff that will help her own cause, basically later on. Her father ran for UKIP apparently earlier in the week as well. He didn't win. So I'm like, hang on.
Interesting family.
The math isn't matching right now, right? This doesn't make sense. It's a very weird a weird family to go and do something like that. And with her own immigration policy, she would have ended up deporting her own parents if they were to have gone through. So,
well, or special rules. That's what would have happened.
Yeah, so that's weird. Now, another layer to this as well is that you find out the people who were arrested for the racist tweets that were sent out. I think one of them was sent to Marcus Rashford. One of them's a youth football team coach.
Youth football team coach, grassroots level.
Yeah, so at grassroots level, he's a youth coach, right? Which means everyone thinks like, oh, it's just some guy who's like a yob who's like in Middle England who is in like a random
drunk, uneducated.
House. He's drunk, uneducated, stupid. But this guy's a coach. He deals with kids of all colours all the time. He's saying stuff like this. I'm like, okay, that's problematic. Another layer to this is Portsmouth have an under-18s team.
Right.
They have a Snapchat messaging group. And some of their Snapchat messages got leaked. And it was just racial slur after racial slur after racial slur about all the players. And that
all the players as in those three, or
about those three players who missed the penalty, basically.
Okay.
And in there, they're basically saying everything about every racial slur you can think of under the sun about those players. And this then makes me think that, hang on, we can't think that all of this is just old, ignorant people saying it anymore. It's also seeping into the younger generation who are saying the same racial things about players who are only slightly older than them. Now, no kid's born racist, but I think it's learned somewhere along the way. And the question is, where is that way, or what point is that learned?
Is it conscious or not?
I think it has to be conscious, because you're consciously embarking. Actually, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's learned behavior.
Maybe not conscious. Here's a better way of phrasing it. When said people, right, so not the drunkards, like you're saying, basically people of education who have an okay mind, let's say sound mind, right? Yeah. What is the intention? It's wrong either way, so we're not going to defend that the comments are right or wrong. They're clearly wrong. I get it, yeah. But what is the intention of the comment? Is the intention to fit in? Is the intention is the popular thing within that circle? What do you think the intention is of these people? Or is the intention, I genuinely believe what I'm saying, and therefore I'm a racist?
I think a part of it is they genuinely believe the things that they're saying, which is black people are this, they are that, they shouldn't be representing the nation. Like, these are probably the common thoughts that are held amongst themselves, and it just makes you think, oh fuck, like, where did that go so wrong for them to form that thought pattern?
Hate, man. Like, we can say the word racism, right? But that might get lost on some people.
They are
this
under
is
18.
Hate.
They're under 18 kids. And I'm like, you're fucking thinking like this. You're under 18 years old. Like, where did you get this from? At what point did you pick up these habits?
Indoctrination.
Where did that come in? Like, was it your parents? Was it something you heard in school? Was it something that wasn't stamped out at school? Have you not been exposed to minority people? Like, there's so many factors that you have to think to really get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, but it's the same with anything, isn't it? It's just that obviously racism and hate, or hate crime, let's say, is very inflammatory, but all behaviour is learned behaviour based on what you read, what you see, yes, the influences. But you're right, the question we have to ask is, and that's why I think to take it a step further is, this is hate, man. Like, how can a person hate another person they probably don't know on a personal level? That's true. It's not like they hang around with these three guys because of their colour.
Because they missed the fucking penalty in football.
Like
they killed anyone.
They missed the penalty and then blamed the inability to score on their colour. On someone's colour, man.
It doesn't make sense.
Unacceptable.
Bearing in mind, a black man carried England to the knockout stages as well. But that gets overlooked, doesn't it? Because that's not important. That context isn't important. But I'm like, Raheem Sterling scored all the goals for England up until the knockout stages. So without him, you wouldn't have scored those goals. That's it. It's that simple.
Well, you wouldn't be in the position to... Yeah, exactly. And like your point is, when they're doing well, it's a united kingdom, right?
Yeah.
And then in the back end, it's the problem is it's the need to scapegoat. Why can't it be? Why can't the party line be Italy played better? Italy's day. Yeah. Whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, they played well. Fucking, we did really well to get to the final. Great run, boys. But no, these three, man, this is the problem. And it's not because they're shit. That's a different thing. You could have said, oh, they're shit, and why did they have penalties, right? But it's because they're black. Yeah. That's wrong.
There's so many other criteria that you can say. So you can say like, oh, he's a crap player, he's out of form,
right?
He's not played well.
Yeah.
He's been off colour for a while. He's not been great.
He's been what? Off colour.
He's been off colour. Like it just.
All right, Indy. A bit of a pun there.
Yeah. Cheers. Sorry, I didn't mean that. That was unintentional. But you can say all these different things like that are like minor insults, or you can say that they're not very talented, right? But taking it to this level, just saying like, no, I'm gonna skip out 1 to 40 and say number 41, which is the race thing, straight away. I'm like, hang on,
and which is completely irrational.
To that straight away,
it's irrational.
Like I can tell you now, I'm not Marcus Rashford's biggest fan because I think he's an inconsistent player. I think he's done great for the nation.
That's an opinion based on.
But I say that as an opinion based on his footballing ability as a man, top guy, like feeding kids and everything, sorting all that out. Here's the fucked up thing. One of the guys who tweeted him the racist thing as well, another person.
The BBC guy, man.
This today.
The comedian.
No, hang on.
I'd rather he scored the goals and the kids go hungry. You see that one?
Yeah, he said that. Now, comedian, I get it. Like, I think if an established comedian said that, it's acceptable. But I think tweeting that out doesn't help. If you say that in a stand-up show later on when it's called
in context,
that's cool.
When it's
that
died
makes
down.
sense. If you build up the joke, if you have a premise, if you can then tell it properly, it works, it sticks. But if you say it like straight away, it's like, yo, you're just being a bit of a hack and you want to get
inflammatory
laughs.
Hate.
But park that for 1 sec, right? One of the guys who racially abused him said his son got free school meals from Rashford's campaign. So I'm like, hang on, this guy actually fed your kids.
Benefited.
He fed your kids and you're still abusing him? Fuck me. How thick are you, honestly? That's incredible. And he said, oh, I was drunk, I didn't mean to do it. I said, mate, I get drunk. The first thing I do when I'm drunk is I pick up my phone and I racially abuse someone, don't I? No, I don't. Like, there's
I know,
no
I know what you
that.
do. I know what you do.
What do I do? I fall asleep in clubs. Yeah.
He goes in the corner and lets his hair down, falls asleep, and then we get a message saying, oh, I've gone home now.
I'm going home. I'm tired.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Exactly. But there's things like that. There's a guy who works for Savills. Have you heard that story?
No, go on.
So a guy who works for Savills called Rashford, I think it was the M word.
Right. N.
And
November.
Yeah, the M word. And someone screenshotted it. They added Savills on Twitter. Savills said they're investigating. The guy said, the guy's backup, he deleted all his social media. He said, oh, I was hacked.
Yeah. Cop out. Easy cop out.
Like, you can tell when someone's hacked. You can go into their IP history. You can see where it logged in from and see if they were hacked. I don't think he was. I think he's using it as a cop out. Trying to hide.
Absolutely, man. There was a guy...
Incredible. And he's a director at Savills.
Again, so that's what's worrying. You've got people who clearly are well-informed, educated, and again...
high up at companies.
Do you know what I mean? So in positions of power, and obviously their word carries some weight, and they're thinking, and the problem is that's going to filter down, isn't it? If someone, like we said earlier, with central leadership, if you are saying something... then if the people who are not going to make an opinion, right, who just want to conform and follow, that will become their opinion. And you're basically radicalizing these moderates, man. That's the problem, the uneducated. Yeah. And that's a big issue, man. There was a comedian who said something like... Right, he made it like a matter-of-fact kind of statement thing. He's something like, all I'm saying is the white guys scored and the black guys missed. Something like that, right?
Yeah, I get that, yeah. I was like,
the BBC guy, you can't say it. You can't say this stuff, man. Like, it's just... When you need solidarity, when you need people like, David Beckham, Gary Lineker, all these people coming out, Rio Ferdinand saying, great run, boys, this is not England, that's what you need.
All of them have also missed penalties. Like, some of the greatest players ever missed penalties. Ronaldo missed a penalty Champions League final. Beckham spooned that penalty over, like, all those years ago. I'm like, come on, man. Like, people memorise all this stuff. Like, it stays there, but it doesn't taint who you are as a person. I don't sit there and think, oh, he missed it because he's white. Like, I don't think that. I just think, like, yo, he missed a penalty. That's it. It's not a big deal. That happens.
And if you think about that, we can't even imagine a situation where that would ever be said, oh, he missed it because he's white. And like, it doesn't hold any...
No, it doesn't hold any meaning. But if you say you missed it because he's black, you're like, oh, hang on. That resonates with people. I'm like, well, why does that resonate with people? You know? It's incredible.